all calls were diverted to the manager's secretary, Diane Plummer, who attempts to make Tony's job a little bit easier in the office.
He knows what he wants, he knows which way he's going, but he's nice to work with, and he's got a nice warm heart, and that comes across to everybody. He doesn't throw his weight around or anything, but we all know when he asks us to do something that we've got to get on with it, because when he asks, then it's obviously got to be important. He spends a lot of time on the phone, talking to different teams, managers, finding out what other players are like. He has scouts that he's on the phone to. Unfortunately, he has to get involved as well with the boardroom, as you know, finances are very difficult here, so that's always a great pressure for Tony. He spends a lot of time travelling away, so I don't think he gets much time at home with his family, but he seems to enjoy it. He's got a very strong character, very strong, and I think that keeps him going. Sometimes when the rest of us are wilting, he seems to find a second strength, and that keeps, everybody else revved up as well.
That work is certainly appreciated by the small backroom staff. Secretary Keith McAllister leads the happy but pressurised office team. Groundsman John Harris, 24 years with Bournemouth, has seen just a few changes both on and off his treasured pitch. So what is life like at Dean Courts?
The people working here have a tremendous team spirit, and I feel this is one facet of the club that other people don't realise, that there is another team, and this team is behind the scenes, and they're a great bunch of people, really, really great bunch, and we have a happy spirit, and we all work with one another. We might not have pound notes, but we got happiness, and happiness goes a long way.
About your memories.
Happiness! Happiness!
This is the manager. I told you I had a good relationship with him. He doesn't sing very well for a Welshman, but...
Best groundsman in Bournemouth. The fact that he's the only groundsman makes no difference, George, does it? He's the best.
The motivation of Tony Pulis was hard to get away from. Training finished at 12:30. The players were to return home for the afternoon, reporting back at Dean Court at 6 in the evening for the coach trip north. Tony Pulis, having showered and changed, made one phone call to his wife, asking for a light lunch to be ready at home in 15 minutes. Debbie Pulis is perhaps just as important to Bournemouth Football Club as her husband. Without her continuing support, Tony would not be able to operate his workaholic lifestyle. He arrived home at 10:01. Baked potato and pasta were duly ready on the table, and Debbie knew this was to be a fleeting glimpse of the man she married 11 years ago in St Mary's Church in Newport, Wales.
Oh, very normal. Yeah, he sort of pops in, pops out, rings me on his way. I'll be home in 10 minutes, get me a jacket potato on or pasta, and it's quite a normal thing.
So much you see of him?
Not a lot. He goes to watch games a lot most nights, and the children got used to it now, so I don't mind being on my own, so it doesn't worry me at all.
So what's a typical day in Tony's life, if there is such a thing?
It's not really a typical day. Every day's different. He's off to the ground, and then we don't normally see him until, sometimes 7, 8 o'clock when he's doing School of Excellence. And he comes in, has something to eat, and then the phone starts ringing, and the phone is ringing non-stop. Always taking messages, and secretary at home, really. He doesn't bring any football problems at home at all. As soon as he's into the door, he doesn't tell me anything. He just he switches off straight away.
And finally, what sort of person would you describe him as, if you had to describe him?
Oh, gosh. Just a warm family man. I've known him for, 17, 18 years now, and he's always been the same, and he's not changed at all.
I'll ring you, Deb, later on. No, I'll ring you.
Within 15 minutes of arriving home, the Bournemouth manager was on his way again. Training was forgotten. Now it was a drive to Tranmere Rovers to watch their Friday night game with Southend. 2 Southend players were possible future recruits to Dean Courts. Tony, Debbie doesn't seem to see much of you. How is that from a marriage point of view?
I think it's the best way, Grant. I think it's the recipe for a long and lasting marriage. We don't get on top of each other in respect of being around, and we don't tend to see each other a lot in the job that I've got, but I think it's not a bad thing. We've got 3 lovely kids, and she loves pottering about and doing her different things, and the kids are her life, and you know, I come a poor fourth at the moment, Grant, and she's. I think, you know, obviously the fact that we do bomb around and we've got unusual hours tends to help the situation as well, because we spend a bit of time together and she enjoys it. I think she enjoys the irregular hours. I think as soon as it starts getting regular and, you know, I start hanging around the place, I think she'd soon get fed up with me.
Now, it's 1 o'clock on Friday. You've had the training session off to see a game at Tranmere. What about tomorrow's game? Is it in your mind what the team's going to be?
I'm pleased because Warren Aspinall and Steve Cottrell have come through a training session today. I'll have a chat with Mike Trusson on the way out, and we'll discuss things and talk about things. Or I could be in a lovely position where I'd have to leave someone out. Usually I'm in a position, Grant, where, you know, I'm just saying whoever's fit plays. But I might hopefully have to make a decision tomorrow, which will be nice for us.
The luxury of a fully fit squad has not been a common occurrence at Dean Court. That's when a manager can make the team selection he wants rather than the only team selection possible. Tony Pulis was to get that luxury at Stockport. That match was still 24 hours away, though, and it seemed like the journey to Tranmere was to take 24 hours.
From the traffic, can you take the traffic?
A terrible journey saw hold-ups all the way north. A34, M40, M42, M6. Each had its own frustrating roadworks and traffic jams.
Debbie, how you doing?
A 4-hour journey became a 6.5-hour trek. Throughout it, the mobile phone was in constant use. For a fleeting half an hour, there was a chance for a young player, recommended in another phone call by another manager.
Hello? Hello, John. Yeah, what are you up to? The lad signed for Bristol City, is he? So we've missed him. No, Gordon recommended him, John. He just had a problem off the field a little bit.
When you have no money to spend, the importance of finding likely youngsters before anyone else becomes even greater. That search is a continuous one. Only the day before, Bournemouth Football Club had reaped rich rewards by such scouting. Joe Parkinson, bought from Wigan by Tony Pulis for £35,000 8 months earlier, had just been sold to Everton for £800,000. Forget about results on the pitch. Any man who can turn around that sort of profit is worth his weight in gold to any club, even if he would prefer not to sell any of his players. That decision is made for him by a chairman desperately attempting to reduce the current £2.1 million overdraft, which has already been reduced from £3.4 million. It is the continuing pressure to sell which undoubtedly affects Tony Pulis the most.
Well, it's very, very disappointing. You know, I bought Joe for 35 grand and give him a 3-year contract. And you hope and pray that you keep him for 3 years, and he was a player that you could build a team around. It's soul destroying. You know, you bring your best players in and then you sell them off, or you bring good players in who you know are good players, and then you sell them off. You know, we've ended up, 6 or 7 players have left this football club again this year. And I don't think you've got any chance of being consistent. The only chance you've got of being consistent is having a consistent team that plays week in, week out. And for the first 16 games of the season, we did really well. And that was when we could pick the same team week in, week out. We had a few injuries. We weren't in a position to go out and buy players, or even loan players because of the embargo. And then what happens then is that big overdraft drags you down, and you get pressure from the directors to sell players, and you've got to sell. You know, I don't want to sell, but you've got to sell to keep the club running. And, you know, that's been my directive, to sell people to keep the football club running.
With continuing boardroom pressure to sell, the manager's position remains unenviable. As soon as he produces a player of value, that player will be used to reduce still further the overdraft. Apparent divisions and unrest amongst the board of directors make Tony Pulis' job all the harder.
Hello, Di. Is he still not there? Di, can you do me a favour? Can you ring him at home, ask him to ring me?
After a highly frustrating car journey, we eventually arrived at Prenton Park at 7:45, 15 minutes into the First Division contest between Tranmere and Southend.
Yeah, it's one of those journeys, Grant, that you hope doesn't happen too many times. We've been in the car, 6-7 hours from Bournemouth. We've missed the first goal, but it's, like I said, the players that are playing, that we were hoping were going to be playing, are playing, so it'll be worth it.
How often would you watch a player before you'd be interested in him?
Sometimes, Grant, you'd watch him 3, 4, 5 times. Other times, maybe only watch him once and go off a recommendation of either Mike Trusson or John Williams, where they've watched him and they've recommended him. And I speak to a lot of people in the game as well, Grant, so I find out as much as I possibly can.